I love that very much. I love that. It was very funny. It was more of a warning of like the congregation loves her so much. I don't know that they're ready to love someone else.
Oh,
Like
yes.
you might be going in and not have, have kind of the cards stacked against you. And I said, well, I don't know. And then nobody knows this, but Cantor Roger and I had an incredible conversation on the phone before I even came to Indianapolis. And you were so supportive and so excited about my musical background, and you were very ready and willing, as you always have been, to give of yourself in the way that you do. Um, and I really think that was the first inclination I had that I would be stepping into kind of a safe space, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense, and I think that I think it's a mutual admiration society, because you have done so many wonderful things to keep me involved in the congregation. And for us to work together was an important step that very first year for the congregation to see that we are colleagues and we are friends. So,
Yes. And
so I'm
I
thrilled. And I'm thrilled to be the very first master that you have invited to participate.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And definitely that collegial relationship has developed into a friendship. My son did ask me if Cantor Roger was his bubby, and I was like, well, kind of. And he's still waiting, Brandon, to watch some Star Wars movies with you, which I'm sure will happen at some point. But this hour is about learning so much from you, and what you want us to know and what you want to share with us. I would like to invite you to start by taking a step back in time. So, Cantor Janice Lowenstein was invested at 28 years old, and you came to the state of Indiana to IHC. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about that time, a little bit, how did it feel to come to, I know you were not foreign, you knew the Midwest well, but what do you remember about 28-year-old Janice?
Well, first of all, I remember coming across um, several states in my car, in my little Toyota Corolla with my cat, who was not much of a car cat at the time, but being welcomed with open arms by the families of the congregation, and especially by the Paul family. The first 10 days that I lived in Indianapolis, I lived with Dorit and Gerald Paul. They opened their home to me because my furniture wasn't here. So they were just wonderful, supportive friends and congregants who wanted to make sure that I was safe and taken care of when I first got here. Um, I don't remember a lot about those first days because there was just so much going on. There was an office to arrange and books to put away and all. And of course, coming at the beginning of July, there were the High Holy Days to begin to think about. I do remember the first week I was here, I met with the four professional singers that had been singing for the congregation. We had a rehearsal together, and I tried to get to know them, and they me, and everything else is almost a blur because there was so much going on.
So, and it really is, it's such a whirlwind to arrive at the beginning of July. And as you say, you barely have your books unpacked before it's time to start putting together cues for the High Holy Days.
Right.
And I will say, Dorit and Eloise, I saw you cheering over there. I love it. They are still our greatest champions and supporters.
Yes.
So I asked you this when we had the chance to meet last week. I've made the decision, just so everyone knows, not to kind of surprise our masters, but rather build this hour together. And I asked you last week, and I loved your answer. I'm wondering if you can share with everyone. If you were able to give 28-year-old Cantor Janice Lowenstein some advice in this moment, what would you say?
Listen more than you talk, ask for help, and share kindly and gently with the people around you, but listen more than you talk.
Hmm. I love that.
I know that's not what I said to you the other day because I can't remember what I said, but
No, but
I
I
think
love that. Someone once told me that when you start in a new congregation, you are entering a room where the conversation has been going on for decades without you.
right.
You'd be smart to sit down, take a seat, and listen for a little while before kind of, sometimes we go in full of our youthful energy, like a bull in a china shop. And so I love that advice. That's fantastic.
I will say one other thing about when I came to Indianapolis. Indianapolis Hebrew congregation in the early 70s had hired Cantor Stephen Richards, who's one of our colleagues. They hired him, yes, as a music director, but also as a youth director. And he had really left quite a mark on the congregation. Um, in 1976, in 1977, he left Indianapolis Hebrew congregation and came to be a teacher at Hebrew Union College when I was a student there. So I got to know him, and I really have to tell everyone that had it not been for Cantor Richards, I probably would not have been here at all, let alone 38 years. He was a great mentor and support. But in the 2 years intervening, the congregation had hired a student from Bloomington, an Israeli, who was in charge of the music. And evidently, he was just radical enough so that when I showed up, they were ready for kind of some comfort music.
I love that. I never knew that there was a 2-year gap. And isn't it funny that there were 2 years before I started too, right?
Mhm.
It seems to be kind of our breathing period, perhaps. Cantor Roger and I have multiple things in common, from our artificial left hips to our shoe size, right? Is
Right.
yours your left or your right?
Mine's my right, but that's
You're
all right. A
right.
hip
That's
is a
right.
hip.
Together, we have a pair of real hips.
Yes.
So, so I would,
So we're
I would
really hip.
Right. Oh, I love it. I love it. Let me ask you, tell us a little bit about your journey, what led you to the cantorate, and how you ended up in cantorial school.
Well, I actually had an interest in music, evidently, from the time I was a little kid. The piano that is in our home is the piano that my mother bought for our apartment in Chicago when I was 6 years old. And at the age of 7, I started piano lessons. But being 7 and not knowing very much about anything, those lasted about a year and a half. But I continued to play because I thought it was really interesting. And I had learned enough about reading music that I could sort of pick out things on the piano. But um, all through all through my years in school, and particularly in high school, I was involved in music. I became involved in music at my temple when I was 9 years old, and was in the junior choir. And we had a cantor at that time, interestingly enough, although I didn't know him well because he was only, talk about the 2 year thing. I only worked with him for 2 years, and then he left, and they hired a music director. And she became another one of my mentors. Her name was Judith Carson, and a lot of the people who are on this call have seen her in action when she came for my 25th anniversary, when she came for my retirement. She was a phenomenal musician, and I followed her lead in many ways. But I also had some tremendous teachers on the high school level. I actually, between eighth grade and freshman in high school, I started to play the flute. And my band teacher, Maurice Golden, was A, Jewish, and B, a phenomenal teacher and leader. And then I also sang in the choir in high school. For 1 year, I actually got a grade for it. The rest of the time, I was a ringer, if you can believe that. And our choir director, Jules Schwartzstein, taught me basic music theory because he actually established a music major class in our high school, which was very unusual for Chicago public schools. but I studied music and I determined that I was going to go to a conservatory. Um, and my parents were not so thrilled about that. But when I was able to get into the college of my choice, which was Chicago Musical College, and they didn't have to pay for it, what were they going to say? You know?
Right.
So I have an undergraduate degree in uh, music history with a minor in about five other things, including Jewish studies, because in Chicago we have a phenomenal school called, well, it's now called Spertus College of Judaica. And I attended classes there while I was in college at Roosevelt University. And I continued to work in Jewish music in synagogues. I taught religious school music. I sang in the choir. We had for a while a uh, a Hazamir type choir in Chicago, and I was involved with that while I was until they disbanded. Um, but one of the people I met along the way was an Orthodox cantor by the name of Chaim Nyman, and
Hmm.
he had come to Chicago as part of the Board of Jewish Education in Chicago as their music specialist, and that's how I got to know him. And he's really the person who pushed me into going into cantorial school and helped me to understand that I could learn Jewish music best by becoming a cantor. And so, following his following his advice, as well as having gone to an early organizational meeting of the Guild of Temple Musicians, which was a non-cantors group, I felt like, okay, this is the place for me. And so there I was, and it was a 5-year undergrad program, so I have two bachelor's degrees and a doctorate, honorary. Um, but I was really able to push through in 4 years because of my background in Hebrew and in music. So
It
that's,
sounds like it was just the kind of the perfect marriage of two passions, right?
yes.
Your Judaism and your music. And I find that's so natural for so many of us
Hmm.
who choose this path, right? That we are as passionate about our Judaism and tradition and heritage as we are about music. Um,
Absolutely. And that's part of the reason I was able to get in, because one of the questions that I was asked at the time that I entered the school, there was literally a handful of women in the school. Well, maybe a handful and a half. And one of the questions was, well, after you've and of course it was asked by a man, after we've trained you for 5 years, are you going to be a cantor? Which was a question that absolutely flummoxed me. It was really the only time in my cantorial education that I felt there was some anti women bias. But once I collected my thoughts and was able to respond, I said exactly what you just said. I am passionate about Judaism. I am passionate about music. And this school is the only place where those two passions coincide. So, yes.
I want to share with everyone something that you and I talked about just the other day because I think you're probably too humble to mention it. And that is that I asked Cantor Roger, I said, in the 1970s, I mean, female cantors, like I was ordained with a class of 10 women. It is the tables have turned to a point where I think the cantorial school is actively looking for male candidates.
Oh,
Um,
probably.
but in the 1970s, I mean, Cantor Roger and her colleagues, her classmates were leading the way. I mean, paving the way for women. No one had ever negotiated contracts for women before. No one had ever thought about how our needs and contracts might be different than those of men. And what I love is that when I asked you about it, you just kind of said, well, I never really noticed. I just kind of went ahead and did my job, right? You
Right.
showed up in the very professional way that you always show up. And rather than kind of let outside forces dictate the direction in which you went, you just did what you do, which is just move forward and bring your best to the table, you know? And I just thought that was really interesting because so many women will talk about the challenges they faced. And I think you were just so busy. I don't know that you noticed, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I mean, that's yeah. In my family, actually, it's my husband who's the feminist and not me.
I
So,
love that. I love that. Brandon, we love you for it. I want to shift for a second to your IHC audition.
okay.
What do you remember about that audition?
Well, my first audition was in New York City. And although June Herman swears she was there, the two people that I remember being there were Phyllis Herman and Dorrit Paul. And we were in the chapel at the old UAHC building on Fifth Avenue. I sang and we talked a little bit. And fortunately, again, because of my relationship with Steve Richards, I was able to meet Rabbi Rabbi John Stein, who was in New York at the time with the confirmation class. And between Rabbi Stein and Steve Richards, they decided to bring me to Indianapolis. And I came in April, actually, and for it was like a virtually 36-hour visit. And one of the pieces, well, I sang two pieces. One of them was Avinu Malkeinu, which,
As one does.
yes,
Yes.
as one does. But the other was an Israeli song that I had discovered in my days at HUC. It's called Sisi Admat HaSharon, and I actually recorded it, oh golly, 35 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. And that's one of the things that I would love to play. This is the recording that I made in the sanctuary with a very fine Russian pianist, Gregory, whose last name escapes me at the moment. And he is quite a pianist, but it's quite a song. It's literally "Rejoice, O Land of the Sharon." So I hope you'll all enjoy it.
Yes. She's going to share. It's an audio clip, but in
Oops.
order for you to hear it, we have to screen share.
Right. Da-da-da-da. Wait a second, because of course there's always something you want to do. Let me make sure I've got that. Okay, here we go. I think. Sorry.
No,
It's one
you're
of,
fine. We've got you.
there we go.
Brava. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you
I
very
am
much.
constantly astounded. I will just get technical for a minute. Um, the control that you have
Hey, I don't know what's
over.
going on with
Oh,
my, that's not me.
that's interesting. That's not.
This is what I love about me not being able to do what I want to do. And he tells me, stop Apple Music. Yeah, right.
That is fine.
Well, I thought I did.
It's not mine, so I imagine it's yours,
No,
but
it is me. It is me.
It's on loop. If you can go ahead and get it
There we
off.
go. Got it. I got it.
there we go. Thank God for Eddie, right?
Yeah. And Elaine Sandy, who unmuted herself. Thank you, Elaine.
I was just saying that so technically you have just I hear those triplets when you do those runs, and the amount of control that you naturally have when you are just when your voice is at its peak, no matter how wide it is, no matter how big it is, it's really, really technically very well controlled. And I want to ask, what do you think when you hear that recording?
I think, gosh, I wonder if I still sound like that.
It's it's so hard to listen to yourself. It really is. And that's one of the reasons this whole pandemic has been really strange for musicians is we've had to listen to ourselves in ways that we never thought we'd have to. But you should know that I think we're all pretty blown away with that sound. So beautiful.
Well, thank
Tell
you.
me, how long after you arrived in Indianapolis did you meet Brandon?
Ah, well, it was actually only about 5 months. We were initially seated together at a bar mitzvah dinner,
Okay.
and we had a conversation. And he said, "Well, we'll have to go out to lunch sometime." And I said, "Okay, okay, great." And then I never heard from him. And then we ran into each other at a BBYO conference. I was there to judge a speech competition. He was there as a chaperone. And again, we found ourselves seated next to one another. And I said to him, it was the most forward thing I've ever done. I said, you said we would have lunch and you never called. And 2 days later, we were on our first date.
And that was the last first date you ever went on.
It was indeed.
So for those of you who let me just give a little bit of background here because dating when you are a cantor or a clergy person in general is an extremely awkward thing. It's awkward to begin with. When I was in New York City, my mother, who I now believe is on this call, hi mom, who convinced me to sign up for the most traditional way to meet someone, J-date. And of course, when they ask what do you do, I would say, well, I'm a music teacher because I think I'm not going to just put it all out there. But sure enough, when I met my husband, I was like, listen, I'm a cantor. This is this is what I do. But so tell me when you and Brandon meet and you are forward and you say we were supposed to have lunch. It's not an easy thing to date a clergy person. It is probably a much harder thing to be married to us because of the nature of our work and our job. And I'm wondering if you can kind of share with us a little bit about how you guys navigate that.
He is the best partner a cantor could ask for. First of all, before he actually, well, we had met very informally over the summer. But so he knew who I was and what I did. And he had grown up with a cantor over at Bethel Zedek, where he and his family were members. So he understood what it was all about. And he's been very supportive all along. Sometimes some of the best ideas I ever have come from him, as well as the fact that he was the chief of our village to raise our kids.
So let's talk about that for a minute. Tell us about Miles and Eddie. Tell me, first of all, what it was like being pregnant as the cantor of the congregation? Because I know what this feels like very well, but I would love to hear from you how that feels.
Well, actually, it really wasn't hard. I mean, from my perspective, probably because I'm just tough. But the first High Holy Days well, when I was pregnant with Eddie, I had uh, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur before he was born. He was born in January. So I was a little concerned about how high I could sing or what things would be like. So we had to make some alterations there. But other than that, I pretty much kept up my schedule with both kids, with Miles as well. And he actually, how should I say this? Actually, Miles was conceived during the High Holy Days.
I love
So it made very little difference in terms of my physical, because I didn't know at the time. But it was really not hard to me to keep going, and probably because I was younger then.
I one of the things I love about having children as a cantor is that you really are raising kids in the community. Like
Mhm.
when my son is running around the temple, I expect lots of bubbies to either stop him and tell him not to run, or somebody will give him too many brownies at the oneg. Like you really are raising children within this community that already loves them, and to have that is such an incredible blessing. Now, I'm not going to unmute Brandon. I'm going to get you to give me your perspective here, because you said it. You hit the nail on the head. Our spouses do take on a lot in terms of parenting, especially when it comes to, we are in the profession of the personal, which means that we help and support people through their personal lives, which don't usually happen between 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. So tell me kind of how you guys navigated that, and if maybe you have some memories you want to share.
Well, we were very fortunate. First of all, we had a multi-generational household. Brandon's mother lived with us once we bought our house. And although she was also a full-time, fully employed, but she was there as a wonderful backup. We also made a decision that until the kids went to preschool, we would have someone in the house. And we had a series of really very nice housekeepers who cared for them while Brandon and I and his mother were at work. And also, frankly, living 2 miles away from the temple made it a lot easier
Sure.
to respond when there were difficult times. Um, we made it a bit our business to have dinner together every night, regardless of the meeting schedule. And of course, in those days, we had meetings after dinner, not at 6:15 or
Right.
6 o'clock. So that was much, much easier. But I think it was having the multi-generational family and having Brandon, who really, he was he is, I'm sorry, he's not was, he is a really compassionate and nurturing parent. And that was very important. I think we balanced each other well. I always refer to us as he's the roots parent and I'm the wings parent.
I love that.
So he encourages family closeness. I encourage independence.
I love that. I love that. And I think, it also, um, it also helps. I mean, Brandon now is such an integral part of our community and our congregation. And I think that what people may not realize is that, clergy spouses really, I don't want to say it's expected, because that's not the case, but I know that it is so much easier when you have the gift of being married to someone who does want to be in a community also. Because I think there's a big difference between working for a community or working in your community. And I think IHC is your community. This is your community, and it has been from the moment you came here. Um, and I think, it's very different to kind of show up and work for a congregation rather than really raise your family and lay down your roots and grow with the temple community. Does that make sense?
It does. The other thing, though, that I would point out about Brandon is that his family was community oriented. And
Mm,
so for him to be a part of not only the Jewish community at large, as he has been throughout his lifetime, but also the IHC community was very natural for him.
right, right. I love that. And so, what a gift that must have been for you also to
Oh,
have. Like,
absolutely.
I know your mother-in-law was a big part of your life, and
Right.
that's
And she's a big
fantastic.
part of the community's life.
Sure.
So, yes.
So let me ask you a little bit now about the klezmorim. So you get here, you start you take a seat at the table and listen to this conversation that's been going on for decades. And musically, where is the community versus where you want them to go at the time? So I'm thinking kind of through the 80s, early 90s, where's the congregation musically and where do you want them to go?
Well, when I came, it was on kind of on the cusp between the more traditional Reform congregation and the more participatory congregation. Steve Richards really had developed a wonderful choral program while he was here, and because he is a composer and an arranger, had left behind a wealth of his music, which it was easy to build on. So it was important to me to try to, because I love choral music so much, to maintain that tradition of choral music, to raise up children in the choral tradition. So within the first couple of years, I began two children's choirs, one which we subsequently named the High Notes for first through fourth graders, although a couple of times we tried putting kindergartner kids in, which each time I did it, I said, why did I do this?
Right.
And went back to the first through fourth grade model, and then a fifth through eighth grade model, which involved part singing. And that model lasted for a while until the Hebrew school structure changed. So that was very important. But also because of my background as an instrumentalist and my knowledge of Jewish instrumental music and I wanted to try to bring in to, bring out the talents of our congregants. So actually, I think it was probably 2 or 3 years after I arrived, I tried to start a klezmer group. I had one violin player, one clarinet player, and one flute player, and that was it. So then in the early 90s, we decided to try it with high school kids and as part of the Derech Torah program. And we started, we called it klezmer band, a Jewish jazz band. And we had about 5 or 6 high school kids that were interested. And that kind of morphed into what would eventually become the 65th Street Klezmorim, which sort of officially started in 1996. They and it's been an incredible group. We've had times where we've had loads of high school kids. Eddie actually played in the klezmer group when he was a teenager, um, and they of course then would go off to college and we'd lose them. But we have a really nice core group of adults, and I brought along a clip of the klezmer band playing at Hooverwood not too many years ago. In this case, I was playing the flute. We had by that time transitioned from me as the leader to Andrew Lyon, which many people may remember as the leader, and he determined. And so I thought I wanted to stay connected with the group. So we were coming in the middle of this piece of music, but it's really, you'll see not only the people in the band, but also the people at Hooverwood who came to hear this concert, which was actually not only the klezmer, but also our choirs. So our kids choir and our adult choir. So let me share this screen.
Please.
This is what I want to share. And I think we're good. Okay.
I love it. I love it. What do you think of when you see that? So tell us, that's at Hooverwood.
That was at Hooverwood. The piece is called Simchat Torah. It was actually one that I had arranged for the group. And there were at least, well, the fellow on the tuba was a high school kid. Two of the trombone players were high school kids, and one of the clarinet players was a high school kid. So
I
it
love
was
it.
really, it was a lot of fun. And the people in the klezmer really enjoy the music and the history of the music. It's something that I enjoyed as well, and have tried to.
And it should be noted that our 65th Street Klezmorim, we are not speaking about in the past tense.
Right.
That you still are very active and meet weekly. And just this week, I think, and Eddie can correct me, but you were going to figure out, I think, Jamulus or some kind of like jamming software that allows you to do it in real time. Let me also just say to everyone that we as musicians are struggling with this world. I know we're all struggling with this world, of course, but this has been tough. I watch a clip like that and I think, my God, I long for live music, as I'm sure we all do. Cantor Roger, I'll tell you that I'm chuckling because I love that everything old becomes new again. So
Right.
I am about to launch a children's choir that we are
Great.
kind of going back down that path. And so and we've talked about, a high school a cappella group and kind of the different things we could potentially do.
Mhm.
But yes, choral music and making music in an ensemble is fulfilling in a way that solo music can never be. It's a completely different thrill to make music with people.
Right. And there are studies that talk about how participating in ensemble music, particularly in a religious setting, helps with one's religious identity. So
Absolutely. I
it's
believe that.
lots of pluses on a lot of different levels.
I love that. I love that. Tell me, how do you define yourself? So if someone were to say to you, Janice Roger, who is Janice Roger? How would you define yourself?
I am an almost 70-year-old woman who has loved Judaism and music since I was a little kid and has been able to fulfill that love through my work as a cantor, who um, is a mom and a wife and just has lots of different interests that go beyond and intersect with all of those different roles that I have played throughout my life. That's my elevator speech.
I love that. I love that. Is there anything, what is something that you've always wanted to do, but you have not yet done in your life?
Wow. Um, Sing with the symphony. I don't think that's going to happen, but
Beautiful.
you never know.
You never know. You never know. I love that. Um, Tell me about this last clip that you have.
Well, I have a lot of different musical interests, and they come from not only my experiences in the synagogue and in various choirs and college and whatever, but just through my love of music in general. And nowadays, one of the ways I am working with music that I had not been able to spend a lot of time with while I was a cantor is to work with the Great American Songbook Foundation as a volunteer in a couple of their programs, which we can talk about later. But one of the things that was important to me was to bring music into our community. And so I forget how many years we did this, probably 7 or 8. We had, or maybe less, we had a second Sunday concert series. And it was just a variety of different kinds of music, some of it classical, some of it not, some of it showing off our in-house ensembles. And this last clip is from 2014. We have a member by the name of Jimmy Guilford who sang with the Ink Spots as part of his career. He's got a beautiful, beautiful voice. You're not going to hear him sing, but we did some pieces from Fiddler on the Roof as part of our second Sunday concert. And so I'm singing to him as if he is Tevye. The song is Far from the Home I Love. It's a song that doesn't get as much play as Sabbath Prayer or Tradition or um, some of the other pieces from Fiddler on the Roof or Anatevka, but it's a beautiful song, and so let me share it with you. People who are close to me here in the home I love. Who could see that a man would come who would change the shape of my dreams? Helpless now I stand with him, watching older dreams grow dim. Oh, what a melancholy choice this is, wanting home, wanting him, closing my heart to every hope but his, leaving the home I love. There where my heart has settled long ago, I must go, I must go. Who could imagine I'd be wandering so far from the home I love? Yet there with my love.
Love that.
Oh my gosh, and the way he closed his eyes at that last moment was just amazing.
Perfect. Perfect. As musicians, inevitably there's kind of a healthy dose of envy where you always wish that your instrument could do something, could always do X, and my personal envy is always over a really resonant, well-connected high piano. So to be able to sing very high,
Right,
very softly, and even diminuendo on it with that amount of control without pushing kind of breath or air
right.
through the voice. So let me ask you, is there anything that you wish your instrument could do that, or if your instrument could, if you could have one kind of singing ability that you don't feel like your instrument does in the way you want it to?
Coloratura,
Mm,
which, being able to just rattle off those fast notes moving all over the place. It has taken a lot of work for me when I've learned a piece that has coloratura in it to be able to master it.
sure, sure.
So
Yeah.
I do want to say one other thing about that last clip. Um, the jacket that I was wearing, This is a Roger family crazy story. Um, Years ago, many of you who are on this call will remember a store named Jacobson's. And my mother-in-law and I were in Jacobson's. I don't even remember why we had specifically gone. I think because they were having a sale. And I picked out for myself a coat dress, nice black coat dress, very, very appropriate for the work that we do, very good for funerals, etc. And my mother-in-law's, Marilyn's Aunt Nifa, who is Italian, happened to be in the store at the same time. And she was looking around on the sale rack too. And she pulled this jacket off the sale rack and said to me, "You've got to have this jacket." And I'm like, where will I ever wear a jacket like that? And she said, "Oh no, you have to have it. You will find that you will wear it." And she was absolutely right. I think I have worn that jacket so many times. It has been well worth the money that I paid for it. It was more than anything I had ever paid for any piece of clothing in my life. And I was very glad that Aunt Nifa pushed me to buy that jacket.
I love it. I love it. I love it. What drives you? What keeps you kind of pushing forward and striving for greatness, for excellence in all the things you do?
The people with whom I work, I think. Um, you know, when I went, well, before I retired, I thought a lot about what I wanted to do. And I have managed to land in several different areas of volunteerism. And the people with whom I'm working in these various areas are really wonderful people who have their own incredible gifts, who encourage me to, I mean, not verbally necessarily, but by their example, encourage me to do more and appreciate what I have to give. And I think just knowing that people appreciate what you have to give is a way to keep yourself giving and striving for excellence in everything you do.
Tell me, what is your favorite thing to sing? I know favorites are hard, right?
Yeah,
Because it
yes,
asks you to pin one
that's not
down.
one of
But
my words, right?
tell me something you love to sing.
Wow. From which genre?
Anything. Just what
Oh my God.
just
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, one of the pieces of liturgical music that I really feel I've made my mark with, aside from Avinu Malkeinu, friends, I'm sorry, is a Kedusha setting. The melodies were written by Michael Isaacson, but the arrangement is by Steve Richards. And it's got a lot of energy. It's a really beautiful, energetic piece. It's the Kedusha that I always made sure we sang at Ne'ilah because I felt it had the essence of what Ne'ilah was all about in it. So in that respect, I love that. Um, I love singing Yiddish. I don't know quite how I got into it, but when I was in high school, I talked about my choir director, Jules Schwartzstein, and he directed a group called the Jewish People's Choral Society, which if it had been in a different time and I was a member of it, I probably would have been called in front of the McCarthy committee, the House and American Activities Committee, for singing with them because they were all Jewish socialists and they were all old. We lovingly called this group Wrinkle City because it was me and I was like 20-ish, and all of these people who are 70 and above. But I got a love for singing Yiddish from them. And one of my coaches at HUC was Lazar Weiner of blessed memory,
right?
and he composed constantly, even until shortly before his death. And he actually encouraged my Yiddish singing by having me premiere several of his songs that he had recently composed. So, of his songs, I think there's a beautiful little tune called a nigun, which I love to sing. Um, hmm. Oh, and in the genre of Great American Songbook, my favorite song is I'm Still Here, which in some respects is my theme song.
I love that. I love that. I almost did my master's thesis on Lazar Weiner,
Oh,
but I ended up doing it on Heinrich Schalit, who is also,
sure.
fantastic. But that's
Oh, wait,
amazing.
one more classical. Classical.
Yes.
Um, it's a toss-up between Una voce poco fa from The Barber of Seville and O mio babbino caro,
Oh, it's so
which
much fun to sing.
which is a beautiful, beautiful piece that I learned actually when I was still in high school. So,
I feel O mio Babino is the vocal equivalent of just like a rich piece of chocolate cake. Like it's such fun to sing and it's so impressive and not technically that hard to make sound beautiful
yeah.
because it's written so well.
Well,
Um, oh, I
bel
love that.
canto, Puccini. What more could you ask for?
Right, right. That's perfect. I'm going to kind of hit you with my lightning round of some final questions here. What is what is the best part of what we do as cantors, in your opinion?
I feel that well, no. There are two best parts. One is teaching, but the other is being with people in important transitional moments of their lives. To
Hmm.
be able to support them in the challenging times, to be able to celebrate with them in the positive times.
It takes your relationship with another person to an entirely different level when
Right,
you can say, I stood under your chuppah or
right.
I named that baby. It deepens the relationship in a way that is truly humbling. Um, and some part of me knew that that was probably what you were going to say.
But teaching as well, because I think that sharing knowledge with sharing knowledge with people is a great way to get to know them better and have them get to know you better.
What is the part of being a cantor that you could do without?
The paperwork.
I was going to say email enslavement. Is that?
No, 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 no. Having to keep track of uh, having to keep track of payroll, having to uh, keep track of spending and create budgets. So that I think is the part that I could live without, and I'm happy to be living without it.
Right. I love that. Yeah, dream big, but within this budget, right? Of course, of course. But that absolutely, and I will say that we're so lucky to be serving a congregation that values the arts in the way that IHC does.
Right.
That really, no part of me, even in my short time here, has ever felt that the community has tried to say, hang on, the arts are going to take a back seat. And I really think that is because, you have taught everyone what comes with valuing the arts. I think that's lovely.
I think it was there already. I think that there have been things along the way that I've been able to do which have pushed the envelope. Such as our art festival that we did biennially for about 12 years,
Hmm.
and we brought in Jewish artists and had and were able to really do a multimedia weekend for people so that they could see the depth and the breadth of Jewish art. And then the second Sunday concerts and the variety of service music. So
So let me ask you this then. I inevitably 2.5 years in feel like I've barely scratched the surface, right? You spend the first year listening, you spend the next year making small changes, and then, you spend the next year apparently in quarantine. But let me ask you, is there any, was there anything that you wish you could have done during your cantorate, during your time as the cantor, or like an unfulfilled hope that you had?
I have to say no. and part of part of that is because I was given so many opportunities at IHC. I was given opportunities to dream big, but I was given the opportunity to speak and to learn how to create sermons, something which they don't teach and didn't teach in cantorial school at the time.
Right.
So honestly, uh, I'm sure that I'm sure that there are things that other people wish I had done, or maybe wish I had done better. But from where I am at this point, looking back, I honestly think I did everything that I wanted to do. We had incredible collaborations with Butler University, with the symphony, um, with all kinds of with other congregations, not necessarily Jewish congregations. So, you know, no, there's nothing. I don't think there's anything that I personally felt is left undone.
What are the three things you could not live without?
My husband and children, so my family.
Yes.
Uh, let's see, my memories, and wow, hmm. I'm going to say my music, and that is both the tangible and the intangible music.
Mm, right. Your voice, in a sense, right? That,
Oh, my voice, my piano, my flute, the
right,
music
right,
that's in the on the shelves in back of me. It's just music with a capital M, I guess.
right, right. Um, what is the best Jewish holiday of the year?
I really love Passover. And the reason I love it is because it's the one holy day that I don't have to make dinner in a hurry and go to temple.
Where
So,
is where is your favorite place to travel?
oh, I haven't been there yet.
Okay, so well, that was my next question. So the best trip you've ever been on, and then the one you're looking forward to.
I think the best trip I've ever been on was um, it's a toss up between the trip I took with my family in the 90s to Israel in 1998 to Israel, where when there was a Cantor's convention, and the trip to Israel that we took with another couple from the temple um, 3 years ago, and they were the best trips for different reasons, um, which we'll just leave it at that. But they were both the best trips that I've been on.
And where would you like to go?
I want to go to Vienna more than
Yes.
anything else. I want to see where Beethoven lived, where Mozart lived. I want to see the Concertgebouw. Oh, that's in
Yes.
Amsterdam. But the where the Vienna Philharmonic plays. I just want to see Vienna.
I
And I
I
want
am
to eat
with you.
some. I want to eat some Sacher tort.
I Brandon says Aruba.
Yeah, Brandon wants to
But
go to Aruba. Well, his idea of a wonderful trip and mine are slightly different. But he
I
loves
love
the
it.
idea of being on a beach and enjoying the sand. We will get to Aruba. I promise you, Brandon.
I do feel like Vienna is a pilgrimage of sorts for
Hmm.
musicians. I mean, yes, I dream of Vienna also, of just, but I want to go there, without a diaper bag. So at some point,
Right.
I'll make my way to Vienna. Um, my final question for you this evening is, and I know it is so hard for us to even think of what life would be like, but if you were not a cantor
Hmm.
and you had not dedicated your life musically or Jewishly, um, like in that profession whatsoever, what would you be doing?
I would probably be either a high school music teacher or a librarian, one or the other. I love books and I love the idea of being part of a library system. I worked in the library in Chicago during one of my summers in college, and I just really have always felt an affinity towards libraries and librarians.
I love that. I love that. You have been incredibly generous with me, with your time. I want to say for all who are here and for all who are listening that no part of my transition could have gone as smoothly as it has gone without your unwavering support.
Oh, thank
When
you.
I say unwavering, I mean your family support, your musical support, your constant endorsement surrounding everything that I'm doing, and an occasional text here and there to just ask how we are, and if the kids need, if we need anything for the kids, and so from the bottom of my heart, I hope you and Brandon know just how incredibly grateful we are. But also, I hope you see, and you know this moment well, that when we are under a chuppah with a couple, oftentimes we will pause and tell them to turn around and look at the people who are in the room, or even with a B'nai Mitzvah student, we'll turn around and say, look, this is your village. These are the people who love and support you. I hope that you look at the legacy that is your cantorate at IHC and see that these are your people, and that this is really always will be your home.
Well, I have to say, based on what had happened a few months ago when I had a heart procedure and the outpouring of calls and texts and voicings of concern, it's really clear that that everybody in this community are my people.
Well, I'm honored to be counted in that village, and eternally grateful for the village that you provide me. So I'm going to say thank you, my friend, for your time, and for giving to us in this way. Thank you all for being on tonight. My hope was that we would walk away with kind of some little nuggets and tidbits that perhaps we didn't know about Cantor Roger, and I know I certainly did. This is a 6-part series. My goal is to introduce you to the masters of music whom we work with right at IHC. We have many, many extremely talented musicians under our roof. And so I'm looking forward to introducing each and every one of them to you. So join us next week at 7:30 p.m. And Cantor Roger, I will let you have the last word.
Well, thank you. I want to thank you for this invitation and for being able to be with everyone and start the series. And I have to share one story that kind of goes back to one of our initial areas of conversation. Uh, we talked about how being a woman, how did that kind of interface with me being a cantor? And not very long into my tenure here at IHC, I was in the kindergarten class and I was trying to explain to them what a cantor did. Most of these kids had never experienced a cantor. And of course, when we asked for questions, then one of the questions that is forever in my brain, and I can tell you who said it, but I won't in this forum, is, can men be cantors too?
I love
So,
that. I love that. That's so great. Benjamin, when he was little and I asked him, would you want to be a cantor? He said, well, I can't because I'm a boy and I don't play the guitar, which is just no, he said I play the guitar, so I'd have to be a rabbi. So it's just
oh,
a very funny, because I've never played. I love that. I love that. What a pleasure. What a great way to spend the night. Thank you. Thank you to each and every one of you. With your permission, Cantor Roger, we will put this up on our IHC YouTube page.
absolutely.
Wonderful. So tune in next week. And in the meantime, have a great week. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.